In this file we're going to return to Python, and we're going to make a call from Python, sort of simulating maybe an Android or an iOS device making a request from our web page, and we're going to see what happens. We did it before with this file, with Frosty the Snowman, and we got some results. What I expect to happen is that it's going to return just JSON data. Okay, so instead of sort of getting the first name, I'm going to change this, and I'm going to put in some JSON data. If you remember how it's formatted, it's name value pairs. I'm going to use name and John. So the idea behind this is if we send a value first name, who cares what the first name is? I'm not really reading what the first name is. I'm just checking that I've got the first name. It's not empty. I'm going to echo out just my JSON data, which is exactly what I require. As any Android program, any Python program just needs this data. It just needs to be able to handle it, place the information either in a list, in an array, or in a dictionary, so that it can manipulate it later. So that's what my intention is just to print out that. Okay, so I should see nothing on the screen other than that. So I'm going to write a program to actually do that in Python. Let's go and get the old one that we used before. If I go to all programs, Python 2.7, let's start the GUI. Let's go and open up the file, recent files, handler. And there we go. This is the program we wrote before. Let's just widen it so we can see the full width. We made a request to this data, and we sent in first name as Frosty, last name as Snowman, and age as 20, although we didn't do anything with the age. So it read the information from the site, stored it in my data, and then we printed my data out. And that's what we want to do this time, and what we're expecting to see is just the JSON data. First thing I've got to do actually is tell it which file. We no longer have a handler.php. The file that we're using, let's minimize this, the file that we're using is index.php. So there we go, got index, and I'm going to take this out and just have Frosty. There we go, so I've set first name to Frosty, which now matches the file. So it's going to get the first name, and then it's just going to echo out this. It's not even going to bother with Frosty, it's just going to call it John. At least that's what I want it to do. Whether it will do it is another matter altogether, and I'll explain why. So I'm going to run this program. And there's my results. Not what I want, it's what I expected, and I'm going to explain why. It's actually done the work here. As you can see, it's printed out the JSON, the name and the John. We can see that from the actual file. Okay, it's printed it out. It's not printed out any of the PHP statements or the if empty. It's just echoed out John. But it's also given me the rest of the HTML. Now, that's fine. If you want HTML back, that's great. But unfortunately, if we were going to process this data, I don't need all of this. This is really not going to help me whatsoever. One further thing, I'm going to see what happens when I don't send any data in, and if you remember when I didn't send any data in on the web page, it came back with a form for me to enter the data. So if I just take that out, I can just briefly remind you of what happens. It gives me a form with a submit button so that I can type it in. And again, in Python, that's pretty meaningless. So let's see what happens if we, in Python, don't send a value in. So let's go back to handler. Let's just take out Frosty from there. Save the program again and run it. And bingo, there we go. This time, well, we've got all of the HTML. We've got the right version. It's displaying a form, but it's not really what I want. I don't want any HTML at all. I don't want this, and I don't want this up here. I certainly want this, but I don't want this form. I want something else in place of it. Really, I'm going to have to write just in PHP. So I'm going to quickly set up a second file that I'm going to call, let's do index2. So if we can go back to our program here, I'm just going to program in PHP. There's going to be no HTML in there whatsoever. So file and new. Let's save it, file, or save as, let's call it index2, we've already got one. There we go. Oh, that's text, not PHP. So file, new, file, save as, index2, let's put the PHP on the end. Yeah, we want to replace it. There we go. We've got the PHP file now. So I'm going to write some basic PHP statements, and it's just going to be PHP. There's going to be no HTML in here whatsoever. So to start off with, I actually need all the PHP I wrote before. So I'm just going to copy that from here and place it in my file. So it's now saying if it's empty, get the first name. If it's not empty, get the first name and just echo out John. Else, now before I echoed out a form, and a form is no good to me whatsoever, I actually need to echo out some JSON. So I'm going to choose echo, and I'm going to create a simple name value pair being some information. I've made an error, there is no data. Okay, that's about it. I just need to finish off my else statement with the curly brace. Let's line these up nicely. There we go, and I've written my PHP file. Now hopefully that's going to work. So if I send in a first name, it's just going to echo out the JSON there, and if I don't send anything in, it's going to echo out or print out that. But both methods, a name or no name, I am actually going to get JSON data. This is only from Python. Okay, remember we're trying to write from third-party platforms. So let's go back, save this first, otherwise I will have a problem. Let's go back to the Python handler. Remember, it's no longer called index. I've got one called index2. There we go. And let's set again Frosty the name. Let's save that and run it. Got an error. Expected a less than sign. So what mistake have I made in my code? I can't see it at all. Oh, I can. I've got two PHPs at the top. Silly me. Okay, let's save that again. The thing is, when you type in these out, you don't see these things, but I bet you saw it all the way along, just waiting for me to make the mistake. So let's try that one again. Let's go back to my handler and run it, and there we go. We've got the name. We've got just the JSON data coming out. Remember what I said, if we didn't have, so we're going to execute the else part, if I didn't have a value for first name, then what I'm expecting now is just JSON data to come out saying an error, no data. So if I run my program again, now that I've got no data, there we go. So that's working properly now. We certainly don't want to use HTML because we can't do anything with that data when it's returned. I just want some straightforward JSON data that I can parse, we'll come to that later, and understand how to manipulate this data and use it in a proper fashion. So that's for that. Over the next couple of lessons, what I'm going to do is come back to this file, and I'm going to show you what happens when we use different words. IsSet, I mentioned that in a previous video, what that means, and how to actually get the first name from the address bar and print that out. It's not as straightforward as you would think, but it's quite easily done.